delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.
It's me, Wednesday Addams. I regret to inform you that I have devised the meal of misfortune with Wendy's. Normally I'd be against this type of capitalistic corporate synergy. But when the other pigtailed provocateur said I could concoct my own Frosty, I melted. My meal is tribute to the suffering that awaits us all. It's pure torture for your taste buds, with 4 nightmarish dips of dread. Don't waste my time asking which ones you'll get. You must surrender to your fate. Enjoy the anguish.
Dare to try? Something new? Life's too short!
You gotta chill with the snackable drink.
Life is too short. Hey, you gotta chill.
Mogu Mogu.
Moku moku!
Kandit News is brought to you by 76 Circle K Guam.
Good afternoon, my dear friends. It is 3:19 p.m. on Tuesday, September 16, 2025. My name is Troy Torres. Thank you so much for joining me on this rainy, beautiful afternoon. This is a beautiful day. I love the rain. Because I don't like being hot and sweaty. So I I appreciate it when the Lord brings the rain for the entire day, and I consider it to be a beautiful day, and I consider it to be a more beautiful day now that I am speaking with you. Thank you so much for everyone who's joined us live, quite a few of you, and thank you to all those who will enjoy the replay, and to the thousands of you who regularly watch these things. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Buenas, my friend Jose Kiyoshi and Leah, God bless you. Thank you so much for joining, and all of you who will comment. I can't promise that throughout this live show I'll be able to see all your comments while live, but as much as possible I'll try to see, especially if you have any questions or relevant comments during the live show that I would say. But otherwise, after the live show ends, I'll be able to look at everybody's comments. God bless you all, and thank you so much for joining. You know, so in the government of Guam, the legislature in its wisdom over the decades has instituted these mechanisms based on best practices, sometimes taken from the states, other times taken just from the experiences that we have had, the bad experiences that we have had with corruption here on the island. And, you smart senators would come up with legislation to fix things over the past decades. And sometimes these are audit recommendations that come out. And so the legislature, in its wisdom, over the past couple of decades, instituted procurement policies that make corruption a little harder in the government of Guam. And one of these policies that they came up with, this was more than 2 decades ago, was that whenever let's say you are a person in an agency responsible for purchasing things for that agency, and whether you're going to purchase office supplies or new desks or services like cleaning the office, and let's say that you don't have your employees do the cleaning in the office, you have to farm it out because there's just that much work to do. Or one of the other services that the agency might need is computer maintenance, let's just say, right? Or let's pretend lawn maintenance and janitorial services for the sake of this conversation today. In order for you to purchase products or services from the government, from within the government of Guam, and you're purchasing outside of the government of Guam, that outside contractor is called a vendor of the government. And the legislature has made it such that once you go from $1 to a certain amount of money, right? When you're within this window of cash that would be outlaid for the entire year for this one service or product, from $1 or from 1 penny to $24,999.99. Essentially, and I might be getting the very bottom wrong. The very bottom tier might be a little bit easier, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong. It might be from like 1 penny to $499.99. There's a different process, a much more simple process, but generally from a penny to $24,999.99. You don't have to go through a bidding process in the government of Guam. And a bidding process is designed to get the public the best bargain, the best deal for whatever it is that the government of Guam is needing from a private entity. The competitive bid process, and there's an entire, there's all these steps that you have to follow. It's a bit cumbersome, and it's designed this way to protect the taxpayers. But from 1 penny to $24,999.99, if you need something that's going to cost within that for the entire fiscal year, you don't have to go to the competitive bidding process. What you would have to do, if you're the person responsible in the agency for making these purchases, is you'd either send out a request for quotation, or you would call up vendors who are known to provide whatever product or service, and you would get at least 3 quotes from these vendors if there are 3 of those vendors available. And because you assume that the quote that you're going to get back is going to be for less than $24,000 or less than $25,000. Now, once you estimate that the cost of this product or service is going to cost more than $24,999.99, you have to put it out to bid, and there's an entire process. And you go, and it's not just you that's involved at the agency level. You're also involving the General Services Agency, and of course, DOA is involved because DOA has to cut the check, right? And there are all these checks and balances that happen. And the legislature, in its wisdom, instituted this process a while ago in order to help protect public funds. Now, you notice I said $24,999.99 for the entire fiscal year. So, back in the day, a very long time ago, during the Gutierrez administration, the threshold back then wasn't 25,000. The threshold back then was 10,000. And so that meant from $1 or from 1 penny to $9,999.99. it's the 3-quote process. After that, $10,000 and up, you have to go through the competitive bid process. Back in the 1990s, early 2000s. The legislature has adjusted it since then. But back then, the threshold was 9999.99. There was a situation that happened at Guam Memorial Hospital at the time where GMH was paying a contractor. And GMH was paying a contractor on a monthly basis $9,000. So over the course of the year, 12 months times $9,000, what is that? 12 times 9 is 36 plus 36 is 72 plus 36 is $108,000 for the entire year. Well above the $10,000. But what GMH and the administration was saying at the time was, no, look, it was just $9,000 at a time. And it went to the courts, and the courts came back and said, no, it's not. That's not just $9,000. You didn't just come under the $10,000 cap. You purposely structured your purchase orders that authorized the payment at the below $10,000 level, at the $9,000 payment per month, in order to avoid putting this out to bid for the entire year, where in actuality, for the entire year, the government of Guam was expending $108,000 for this personnel contract. It did not go through the RFP process. It did not go through a competitive process. And so therefore, this is null and void. Matter of fact, this is a crime. It's called bid splitting. And ever since that entire controversy and scandal, it was a big deal back in the 1990s, in the late 1990s. Ever since then, I have never, ever heard of the government of Guam doing bid splitting because it was just such a big deal. It was one of those things where everybody was crying back during the Gutierrez administration, there's corruption, it's corrupt. You can't do that, that's corruption. See, they're trying to get away with it. I remember this vividly back then. And so after the Gutierrez administration was the Camacho administration, and I was very young. I was a part of the Camacho administration. And I remember very vividly, because now we had an elected public auditor, and all the audits were being done. And Governor Camacho and Lieutenant Governor Kaleo Moylan, and then after him, Lieutenant Governor Mike Cruz, they were very big about following the audits and making sure that the mistakes of the past weren't repeated. And one of those big mistakes of the past was bid splitting. So there was no bid splitting in the Camacho administration. Then entered the Calvo administration. Eddie Calvo was very big on, look, Felix had no qualifications in his audits. We are not going to have any qualifications in ours. We're going to follow everything about procurement as much as we can. And we're not going to do bid splitting. No bid splitting in the Calvo administration. None that anyone is aware of. So you had this 16-year run because bid splitting was just a bad word. It's a bad term. Something you're not supposed to do. And here I am looking into what's going on with contracts affiliated with Lieutenant Governor, directly affiliated with Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio during the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration. And the last thing that I'm thinking is going on is that there's any bid splitting, because it's just such an ancient thing. It's a part of our past. It's a part of a corrupt past over at Guam Memorial Hospital back in the day. And I'm not saying that we forgot about it. What I'm saying is it was just so part of our corrupt past that how could we forget? And how could we ever repeat that? And so when the Department of Chamorro Affairs, in responding to a FOIA of mine back in February, disclosed that in fiscal years 2020, 2021, and 2022, for the Chamorro village alone, DCA issued a series of purchase orders for comfort cuts to do janitorial services and grounds maintenance at the Chamorro village. And when I saw in this disclosure that there were no contracts that I asked for fiscal years 2021, 2020, and 2022. I thought that was suspicious, but I thought, oh, maybe they just didn't disclose the contracts. Maybe they just forgot. So then when I asked for the invoices last month, all the invoices that have been paid and that have ever been filed relating to comfort cuts in the Department of Chamorro Affairs, and those invoices by and large match the purchase orders for fiscal years 2021 and 22, with an exception in 2020. Apparently more was paid out to comfort cuts than what was authorized by the purchase orders. And in fiscal year 2022, less was paid out than what was authorized by those purchase orders. And I noticed that the amounts were all above that $24,999.99 threshold. And then I asked our General Services Agency, can you guys provide the documents that authorized these procurements? And they came back, and the only documents that they provided regarding comfort cuts were for Department of Parks and Recreation, for the Guam Museum, and for these other couple of agencies. And then I followed up and I asked, I said, are you sure? Are you sure, General Services Agency, that this is all that you guys have on file for comfort cuts in Department of Chamorro Affairs? You don't have anything else? And the response from Andriana Kidigwa, the General Services Agency Administrator, was, this is all we have. And then I realized, oh my gosh, someone or some people at Department of Chamorro Affairs engaged in bid splitting. They issued a series of purchase orders over several months, all under the $25,000 cap, so that over the course of these fiscal years, they could pay comfort cuts more than $24,999.99 for each of these fiscal years. In fact, in one of those fiscal years, fiscal year 2020, they were making payments to comfort cuts without even having a purchase order for at least the first 3 months of the pandemic, of the public health emergency. And so I was having this conversation last night with some of us at Kandit, and I was asking, why would these people in these agencies risk going to jail to do something like this? Like how I mean, I don't, it boggles my mind, because this is not something that is, this is almost in plain sight, everyone. It was like, how did they figure that nobody was going to see this, that nobody was going to catch this? Because it's one of two things. Either there was no competitive bid process, and this was absolutely bid splitting on the part of whoever was in charge of Department of Chamorro Affairs, or there was a competitive bid process, and those documents, including the contracts, are missing from the Department of Chamorro Affairs, General Services Agency, and whoever in between, which would be a whole other host of felonies that would be involved. How? I don't understand. And I was in the government. And you know what? I was in the Calvo administration, was not the cleanest administration. There were things, I've talked about this before, there were corrupt things that happened, right? So I'm not shy in telling you about this. And when I tell you that I cannot remember one instance of bid splitting in the Calvo administration or the Camacho administration, and I'm able to tell you about the other stuff, then you know that I don't have any reason to lie about that. I'm just wondering, how in the world did these people think that, number one, they were going to get away with it, and number two, that I guess if they thought they were going to get away with it, okay, I guess the story ends there, right? Then that just means that they're stupid. But if they didn't think that they were going to get away with it, why did they do it? Because now I'm sure at some point, Attorney General Doug Moylan and his team over the Government Corruption Division are going to see the story that we did, and we attached all of the documents to show it, so that this stuff is just showing in black and white. It's not just what I'm saying, and it's not just what I'm writing. This is based on documentation, right? That's why I put out I don't know how many pages of documents that were disclosed. So Lynn Bennett asked, were they being malicious or were just completely unaware of bid splitting? So ignorance of the law is not an excuse, number one. Secondly, if you look at the purchase orders, they really all were structured in a way that, it's quite obvious that they were just doing this to avoid having to issue an invitation for bid, a competitive bid process. So I don't think that ignorance is something that they can, as an example, if this were to go to a criminal trial, I don't think that these people would be able to claim that they were ignorant of the law. Now, did they think that because they're a small agency and these are relatively small amounts compared to like all these really, really big contracts that the government has, like for instance, the health insurance contract or the life insurance contract or whatever, right? And maybe nobody would be the wiser. Maybe nobody would be snooping around to pay attention on anything. I suppose that's something that they could have been thinking, like, oh, no one's ever going to care to look into this because these are not like $1 million contracts, right? But that's still stupid. It really is. And then you have the administration trying to convince us, and right or wrong, right? I happen to think that many of the things that the governor wants to do are right. But caveat is, I also happen to not trust that the money that she needs, that she's asking for, or the authority that she's asking for to use this money is not going to be manipulated and abused by other people in her administration. Why? Because we're seeing it in the black and white that it's been happening over the past 6.5 years. And so there's a dilemma now, a crisis of confidence and trust in this government because of these misdeeds, and also because the administration is not addressing any of this stuff as well. It's sort of just acting like this stuff doesn't exist. And how many thousands of you are, with your eyes wide open, are shaking your heads and wondering, just like I'm wondering, why isn't the governor acknowledging these things? Why isn't the legislature actively probing these in oversight hearings and investigations? And how the hell did we get to a point where we're back to bid splitting? A corrupt practice of 30 years ago that we thought was done because we went through so much in the public arena talking about how corrupt that was and how bad that was and how wrong that was. And now we're back to it. I'd like to know from Senator Shelley Calvo, who has oversight of the Department of Chamorro Affairs, whether she's going to call for an oversight hearing of DCA and to find out more about this, get answers for us. Because I'm getting tired. It's not easy researching all of this stuff and investigating. And I'm thankful for investigative journalists like Jonah Uggan-Charfaris over at KOAM, who has really we've just been going back and forth on researching and getting these stories out. But this is tiring stuff, and it can't just be the media looking into this. And I'm grateful to Attorney General Doug Moylan and his Government Corruption Division for taking a look at the Teaguac Cemetery stuff. I kind of want to call him up and be like, look, Attorney General, there's this other thing that we found, but at the same time, I don't want to bother him and overwhelm his Government Corruption Division with something else while they're trying to get whatever it is that they're trying to get out so that criminal justice comes against these corrupt things, these allegedly corrupt things that have been happening. This fight for criminal justice against the corrupt we just need to keep chugging along. We just need to keep on, and we can't lose energy and we can't burn out, because apparently there's just so much of it. And we just got to keep going, and we got to keep encouraging people like the Attorney General to do these investigations, do them right, take them to court, and win one for us. Because we could use a win, right? Don't you think we, the public, could use a pretty big win here? After all we're seeing, it's not just the federal court case. It's not just the $1.9 million PUA thing. That can't be the end of our fight for criminal justice. We've got to take this all the way. All of this stuff that's being uncovered, that's coming to light about the past 6.5 years, things that many of you just knew was happening. Maybe we didn't know where it was. Maybe we didn't know who was doing it, but we knew that it was happening. Now it's coming to light. We can't rest on our laurels here. We got to just keep moving and moving and moving and moving this so that there is criminal justice, so that the people who have been responsible, and not just the lieutenant governor, not just the people attached to his family. I'm talking about everybody who has aided and abetted and committed these crimes. For Kandit News, I'm Troy Torres. Here's to hoping for criminal justice against the corrupt. I love you all. God bless you.
You asked, we delivered. Guam AutoSpot is extending our overstock sell-off with the hottest deals on island, like our 2025 GMC Canyon with $4,000 off. Or slide into a brand new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, starting at just $24,995. September is your chance to drive big and save even bigger. Visit us today or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com or call 478-AUTO. Guam AutoSpot, where the savings never stop.
Dare to try? Something new? Life's too short!
You gotta chill with the snackable drink.
Life is too short. Hey, you gotta chill.
Mogu Mogu.
Moku moku!
Buy fuel, get Wendy's. Drive to your nearest 76 Circle K and get free Wendy's. Yes, free. Fuel up with $30 and score your choice of a 6-piece crispy chicken nuggets or a juicy junior cheeseburger deluxe. Fresh, hot, and packed with flavor. But hurry, quantities are limited and this delicious deal won't last long. So hit the road to 76 Circle K, fuel up, and get Wendy's free before it's gone.